Well, folks, we have some weird people running for state house this time around. Some very weird people, courtesy of the New York Times. A Democratic candidate in a crucial race for the Virginia General Assembly denounced reports on Monday she and her husband had performed live on a sexually explicit streaming site. Performed is definitely a word you could use there. Susanna Gibson, a nurse practitioner running in her first election cycle, said in a statement, the leaks about the online activity were, quote, an illegal invasion of my privacy designed to humiliate me and my family. Wait, how did this get online? How did that get online? Well, I mean, the answer is that she was apparently raising money for a quote unquote good cause by performing graphic sex acts online where she told viewers she liked being choked and said that they could watch her urinate for the right price. She is running for a seat in the narrowly divided Virginia State House, according to Daily Wire. She was as recently as last year posting as hot wife experience on the website Chaturbate, where men could pay tokens to get her to perform specific sex acts. In one video recorded shortly after she launched her campaign last year, she told her husband, quote, I'll let you F me in the bleep doggy style in a private room if someone wants to pay. That's the deal. She said, I like being choked. I like being hit. I do. That was a video posted 1 year ago. And then she said for 500 tokens, she would order room service in a hotel and cause the delivery person to see her naked. She said she has had sex with 3 men in one day, and don't tell my husband he was the third. I would say ethically non-monogamous, but I guess that 3 in one day was not. So that seems like not amazing. Now, what's hilarious about this is that she says that the videos are authentic, but they're an illegal invasion of her privacy. That is not an invasion of privacy. If you post on a website called Chaturbate to 6,000 followers while you screw people, that's not how I define privacy. Do you? I mean, no one hacked her phone. No one made her post this stuff live online for money. Have we now expanded the definition of privacy to include not only abortion, but also people performing live sex acts in front of audiences of thousands? How dare you invade her privacy by pointing out that she did this thing? That's Gibson then claimed that she was participating in that if you talk about it, it's a sex crime. It was her account. Ironically, she's running for a swing seat. So there is that. Hot wife experience. Nurse practitioner. I guess the French maid outfit was not available. So there is that. Only the best for our legislatures. Only the best. Is your cell phone running out of battery all the time? And this happens a lot, right? As your cell phone ages, the battery ages, and this means that you find yourself plugged into a wall, which defeats the purpose of having a cell phone in the first place. Well, why not get that thing replaced with a 5G Samsung Galaxy from Pure Talk for free? Get a free 5G Samsung Galaxy with 2-day battery life, edge-to-edge display, ultra-strong Gorilla Glass when you sign up for Pure Talk's unlimited talk, text, and 15-gig data plan for just $35 a month. Plus, it comes with a mobile hotspot. If you're not using Pure Talk, you're simply paying too much. Get all the data you could ever need for half the price of the big carriers on America's most dependable 5G network. Head on over to puretalk.com/Shapiro. Get your free, super durable 5G Samsung Galaxy when you switch on over to Pure Talk. Again, visit puretalk.com/Shapiro. Make the switch to my cell phone company, Pure Talk, the official wireless partner of the Daily Wire. I take all of my business calls on Pure Talk because, again, I value those calls. I don't want them dropped. They have a great network. And you have all sorts of benefits when you go over to Pure Talk, including that free super durable 5G Samsung Galaxy when you switch on over to Pure Talk. So head on over to puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Preborn gives women with unplanned pregnancies free ultrasounds, introducing them to the beautiful life growing inside her womb. Once she hears the heartbeat, the chance of her baby's life doubles. Because of your generosity, Preborn can do all of this for just $28 per ultrasound. All gifts are tax deductible and go entirely to saving babies. Someday, you might meet a baby that you rescued. Maybe they'll save a life the way that you have today. One thing is for sure, you're not going to regret saving a life because life is indeed a miracle and you can do it for not a lot of money. All you have to do is donate by dialing pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby, or go to preborn.com/Ben. That's preborn.com/Ben. You're not going to do anything remotely as important today. Go to preborn.com/Ben and give generously. What's going on in Israel right now is actually quite astonishing. The Supreme Court of Israel is claiming that it has the ability to strike down literally any law, including what they call the Basic Law in Israel, for violating the Declaration of Independence for Israel. So let me put this in context. And this has ramifications for the United States because this is the way that the left would love to see courts rule in the future and how the courts have ruled in the past. So basically, here's the way it works. The United States we're really lucky. We have a written constitution, which means that at the very least you can refer to that document to determine what exactly courts can do and can't do in terms of striking things down, what legislatures can and cannot do. Israel doesn't have anything like that. Israel has a Declaration of Independence, which is not a piece of law. It is a statement of broad purposes about how Israel should be Jewish and democratic. That's pretty much what it is. It's not law. There's no constitution there because the Israelis couldn't come to some sort of agreement about how exactly the government should work, what laws were in bounds, what was constitutional, what was not. So they basically just agreed to disagree. That means that every so often they pass what they call a basic law. A basic law is a piece of majoritarian legislation that then carries with it an inability to override that law except with sort of a supermajority. These basic laws exist. They've been created throughout Israeli history. The Supreme Court of Israel typically has used basic law in order to strike down non-basic law. It's in the same way that the Supreme Court of the United States will use the Constitution to strike down particular legislation. The same thing sort of happens here. In Israel, the Supreme Court historically has used the basic laws as a way of striking down non-basic law. Now, in the 1990s, there was a seizure of power by the Supreme Court, and they decided that from now on, they could basically just cite reasonableness to strike down a variety of executive actions and legislation. Well, Bibi Netanyahu's current coalition, they said the Supreme Court has too much power. We don't want them to do that anymore. So now you're going to have to cite something that's not reasonableness if you want to strike down legislation. And they want to make this a basic law. Right? They actually encoded this in a basic law, saying this will now be the law of the state of Israel, and it is considered quasi-constitutional. So one of the questions, the big question that's now come up before the Supreme Court, is whether the Supreme Court of Israel can strike down a basic law in the name of, like, again, normally in the United States, use the Constitution to strike down a bad piece of legislation. In Israel, the basic law is the quasi-constitutional highest law. How can the Supreme Court cite something else to strike down a basic law? So the argument that's currently happening at the Supreme Court level is whether the Supreme Court can use the Declaration of Independence to strike down a law. Okay, imagine if the Supreme Court of the United States went back to the Declaration of Independence and said that because the Declaration of Independence says that you have the pursuit of happiness, that means that we can strike down anything we want. We'd all go, whoa, who gave you that power? That's a pretty vague sentiment for you to strike down things. But that's pretty much what Israel's Supreme Court is now declaring. They're now declaring that because they don't like the current legislature of the state of Israel, they have willy-nilly power to strike down anything they want in the name of an incredibly vague document, the Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel, which is not, in fact, practical law. It does not spell out how the state of Israel is supposed to work. It does not spell out how the Knesset is supposed to work. It doesn't spell out virtually any of these things. It has a bunch of sort of baseline statements about what they hope the state of Israel will be, right? Talking about how it will foster the development of the country for the benefit of its inhabitants, and will be based on freedom, justice, and peace, and will ensure complete equality of social and political rights. And it will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. But those are pretty vague statements to strike down a piece of legislation that simply says the Supreme Court does not have the ability to say that something is unreasonable and then strike it down. If the Supreme Court were to do this, it's a constitutional crisis in Israel, because effectively what they are saying is that elections can be overridden by the Supreme Court at any time. That any time a basic law is established, which again is supposed to be, it would be as though the Congress of the United States and various state legislatures passed a constitutional amendment to the Constitution, and the Supreme Court then stepped in and said, in the name of the Declaration of Independence, we strike down this constitutional amendment. Like, well, you can't do that. No one gave you the power to do that. That's basically what's happening right now. According to the Times of Israel, during fraught exchanges between the court and the attorneys defending the legislation, one justice indicated Israel's democracy was at stake. Again, I have to say, the irony of people speaking in the name of judicial tyranny, saying that they're doing so on behalf of democracy, is really galling. It's really, really galling. Basically, the Supreme Court right now is arguing there should be no, name your limits. What are the limits on the Supreme Court of Israel? There are none, according to the Supreme Court of Israel and according to many of its supporters. They lost an election. They don't like the results of the election, so now they're going to use the Supreme Court to basically establish that there are no limits at all. Ilan Bombach is the attorney representing the government. He argued the justices are empowered to interpret the legislators' words. There's no legal or constitutional basis for them to review basic laws. In response, Justice Alex Stein asked Bombach, what is the source of the Knesset authority to legislate laws? Bombach pointed to a 1950 Supreme Court ruling. Stein noted that the Knesset was formed before that. The original power source was in the Declaration of Independence. Well, yes, in the sense that it says there should be a legislature, but it doesn't have specific provisions on how lists work. All of that was established later. Other justices also challenged Bombach, indicating that in their view, since the Declaration of Independence defines Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, the Knesset cannot legislate laws, even basic laws, that erode Israel's Jewish or democratic character. Which means that the High Court can simply strike down whatever it wants to strike down, which is pretty amazing stuff. Again, the Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel is, in fact, a basic document, but that does not mean that it empowers the Supreme Court to override anything in the name of the Declaration of Independence any more than the Supreme Court of the United States can use the Declaration of Independence, which is a far more important document to the Western civilization, to strike down law. The Supreme Court almost never cites the Declaration of Independence because there is no purpose to doing so. It is not a piece of legislation. If the Supreme Court in Israel does that, it's going to be a rather large mess because a huge percentage of the Israeli population is going to believe that elections basically have no consequences at all unless you're on the left, in which case they just run roughshod. That's really negative stuff. And I've railed in the United States against people in the United States doing this routine where if the bad guys win, that means the democracy is over. They're doing it in Israel too. It's really bad for any civilization. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.